All right, we are live. Welcome to today's Trio Talks. With me, I have Daryl and I have Lindsay. First, I think we should just introduce ourselves. I'm a newer face. I come on Trio Talks every few times, maybe every 5 times. But like I said, my name's Emma. I'm on the processing team and I oversee all things marketing. So I'm sure I've talked to a lot of you who are listening today, and I'm so happy to be here and be hosting. Daryl, do you want to take a minute just to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks. Hey, this is Daryl Lewis, and um, one of the founder of Trio. So I'm here and happy to be here today. And it's great to be with Lindsay and Emma. And Lindsay, go ahead and you can introduce yourself, and then I'll kick in.
Sure. No, that sounds good. Thanks, Emma and Daryl. I'm Lindsay Matan. I am overseeing our operations on day to day. So I'm helping out on the processing side and also our closings, just overseeing that everything generally runs smoothly here at Trio. So I'm happy to be here to chat a little bit with you all today.
Yeah, so as you can tell, we've got a change up in our team here. So Emma's going to be leading our Trio Talks. Aaron Tuttle, who was with us for almost 3 years, we've made a change in his position. So Aaron's moving on, and Emma's jumping right in today, and it's going to help us with the Trio Talks as we move forward and coordinating a lot of the training and some of those things that you guys have been familiar with Aaron. So our contacts for things that you may need are still the same. So partners at thinktrio.com. And we're super excited that we've got this new team. So the subject today, I think we were talking earlier, and we've got a bunch of new markets, but we also are super excited because we've got a lot of new agents, that I should say returning agents, that used to work with us in the Georgia market that are now back, and they're getting refamiliarized with Trio. We've made some changes, obviously, since they were closing transactions with us. And so I think some of what we're going to talk about today will have to do with some of those specific things to revisit. And then also, I think we're very thankful that Kathy McDaniel, who's a trainer that's worked with us and has approved CE classes. She actually did her first class. When was it, Lindsay and Emma?
Last week, Friday.
Oh, great. Yeah, so it's a 4-hour CE class that is eligible for agents. And I think you got to confirm with Kathy, which markets she can actually issue CE credits, but they are Zoom classes. It's a 4-hour in-depth class for agents that really does a good job talking about, contracts, the Trio and the program, but also in-depth how to write the contracts. And she goes over questions and handles, a lot of just normal questions that agents have. So she has some upcoming classes, same topic that'll be repeated in November. So we'll be sending information out to those of you that may want to participate. And for those outside of, the actual CE, you can participate in the class. And so anywhere in the country, it's a Zoom class, so you can join and get a more in-depth review. Clearly, the documents in your state are going to be a little bit slightly different, but the structure of the contract is the same in all of our markets. So, Emma, I guess we'll kick it back to you, and we'll get into our content.
Yeah, definitely. So today we are going to be discussing the release form, referrals, and then how much your client needs to bring at closing. So it's definitely a very important day. We have covered these topics before, but we get requests for them all the time. So we really just want to say it again and just refresh everyone's, just refresh you on this topic. So we're going to kick it off with the release form. So Lindsay, I'm going to hand this one off to you. Do you want to kind of discuss the authorization to release form and how agents and lenders can sign up for that?
Yeah, absolutely. This is an important one because we know agents and loan officers, of course, like to keep up to date on status of their applicants that they send into Trio. And so this was developed for us to really have it automated where your customer, when they submit their application, they're able to authorize you on their application. So this gives us permission to really provide you detailed status updates, let you know what documentation we might still need, what questions we have about the file. And without it, we just can't go that in depth with anybody that's not on the application itself, right? So we have a couple of options for where customers can submit this release, and this permission basically for us to speak with you. Right in their application, it's one of the first questions we ask. Are you working with an agent or a loan officer? If you are, what's their information? And do you want to give us permission to speak with them about your file? What's great about that is it's right in the application. It's not a separate step. And then if they do it in there, you're actually copied on the confirmation email that goes out to the customer when they submit their application. So you're immediately from the get-go already wrapped into the process, receiving those updates. If for some reason the customer doesn't complete it within their application, they can log back into their portal or visit our website and submit that at a later time as well.
So Lindsay, I mean, that's a big difference compared to how we did things a couple of years ago, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So, I mean, before agents had to go online, download the form, complete it, have their client sign it, and then send it over to us. So now we've really put this forward in the process, and it's built into the application. So as an agent, really, all you have to do is make sure that your customer is aware of that and encourage them to, put your information in there so you can help them out, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like you said, it used to be a PDF form, and then it was a struggle to get it signed and sending it out and getting it back and uploading it, right? All these extra steps. We've now embedded it right into the application, I believe, as of last year. So it's super easy now to get that done. But again, we mention it for you all so that you can prepare your customer for when they're getting ready to submit their application. They know that's in there, and you can help prep them for what they need to put in those fields.
Yep. And so for whether it's a lender or a loan officer, or sorry, a loan officer or an agent referral, right? Both of those are applicable here. So, wherever the lead is coming from, that customer's coming from, make sure your information is added in there so that our team can communicate with you on, open items and then throughout the process.
You got it.
And if you also have an assistant, so you could have multiple people on the authorization form. So if you have maybe assistant that helps you with transactions, you could have them on there just so they're also clued in. And if they have any questions, they could reach out as well.
Yeah, fantastic.
Perfect. Well, we will bring it on over to our referrals. Daryl, do you want to talk a little bit about referrals?
I love referrals. I think I'll tip it back to Lindsay when it comes to the process here. As I said, it's fun because as the company's progressed here over the last, number of years, my level of getting involved in the details has been greatly averted. So I think that the important thing here for everyone to understand is clearly we want you guys to identify yourselves and be a part of the transaction. And if you don't, I think the key is if you don't have either the customer do what we just said or submit the referral here or both, then our team has no idea where the customer is coming from. We get apps all the time, literally 24/7. So for us to be able to then know that this customer came from you is just impossible. So you've really got to pay attention here, and Lindsay will tell you how.
Yeah, you got it. So a couple of important things to know in order to submit your referral. First is where you do that is on trioresidential.com. There's a big blue button for you to click right up at the top of the page, right next to the upload contract, which is another button that we love. And then information that you'll need is the customer application ID, and then also the correct spelling of their name. So both of those items have to match on the referral in order for our system to match it up with the application. So this is another reason why prepping your customer to submit the release, if they so choose, in their application is a really smart move on your part, is because you get then copied on that confirmation email that contains their name and it contains their customer ID. So we do have some customers, right, that maybe go by a middle name, go by a nickname. Maybe you know them by those names, but they submitted their application under their full legal name. And so really being copied on that confirmation is going to help you make sure that you have the information to match up when you submit your referral. And really, we recommend you do that right away once you get that information or follow up with your customer so that you're in there and we don't have to second guess where this person is coming from or, who we might even be able to reach out to if we're needing help reaching the customer, right? Even if we don't have maybe a release on file yet, but we have a referral and we're having a hard time reaching this customer, we can reach out to you and say, hey, did you refer this person in? Can you help us get a hold of them maybe? So that we can proceed to their application and again, help get them out shopping with you to help get under contract with you. So it just helps us be more efficient.
Yeah. And again, so clearly they need to have the customer make their application first because we've got to have the customer ID, which is produced once that application is submitted. And then once that's in, I think everybody needs to be clear. It should be obvious, but the computer does this stuff, right? So if the computer's looking at all our apps, it's got to match up your referral with that application. So that's why that correct name and the customer ID is so critical here and is important. So that's, I think most of our agents do a pretty good job of coordinating with their customers. But, we do get oftentimes customers that hear about the program from an agent. They just make an application. They really haven't made a commitment in their minds to that agent. So I think it's important, again, that you're working with a customer. It's not our job to match you up with your customer. That's your job. Our job is to process the application, work with the customer, and ensure that they're being taken care of. So this is something that for sure is on, the end, whether it's the loan officer again or the agent.
And going off of that, both agents and lenders need to post the referral as well.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's because clearly we've got lender relationships and there's compensation that's assigned to those loans when they get closed. So again, if we don't have that in our system, then our lender partners don't have that information when those loans close and the compensation doesn't get matched, right? And clearly with the agents. Yeah, I think, we still, and since we've got a group of new people that are always attending these, I think it's always good to reiterate, every once in a while we'll get the same agent comment in our info inbox or, calling into our customer service team and, why it's always like, why am I paying Trio for my customer in terms of the referral fee? You got to remember, your client isn't buying this house, we are. And so the procuring cause is actually Trio Residential. It's not your brokerage. We're working with your brokerage under the referral agreement so that you can represent us in the closing. So clearly in the beginning, you're working with your client to find the home, write the contract, they put in their earnest money. But before we close, right, that assignment is being done and Trio's taking over as the buyer on that contract, and then we're closing on the home. So that's why we've got the structure that we do, is that the second half of this contract management is really done by us and the closing and funding is being done by us. So, just to put that into perspective again, look, it's amazing to me how many agents are thrilled to go to Zillow and get a bunch of, my words, garbage leads and pay them 35%. And then they complain about paying us 10% when we're buying the home. So, again, it's part of how we're able to structure our deals and pass on savings to our customers. So, we really have done what I think is a really good job in the last, year. In January, we changed our comp structures, and I know we've got recordings of all that. I won't go into it today, but we've made it much more advantageous to our agent partners. And it doesn't take much to get down to a 10% referral. Well, with my math, that's 25% less than chasing a deal on Zillow, which you may or may not ever close. And with us, it's a guaranteed closing once we've got the house and it appraises. So, pretty secure deals in working with our program. So anyway, sorry, Emma, got off on a tangent there, but
oh, great, perfect. Definitely always good information to share with everybody listening. Like you said, we have a lot of new listeners, so we always want to keep bringing up old topics and just refreshing everybody. So our next one is going to be the closing costs. So how much your client needs to bring to closing. I think this is probably the most important topic to bring up, just because you don't want any surprises down the road, especially for your clients when they have money in savings. So Lindsay, I'm going to hand this one over to you. Do you want to discuss a little bit about our closing fees and everything?
Sure. So I think what's important to know, and Daryl touched on it briefly, is as the agent, you're writing the contract initially in your customer's name, right? The pre-approved customer that we've sent out shopping with you. And so because that contract is written in their name, they're also the ones that are going to be depositing the earnest money to start off that contract and get that validated. So something to keep in mind, earnest money is not something that we list on our cost to Trio, but they're entering into a purchase and sale agreement, right? So they need to be prepared for that cost. What we do with that earnest money is we do credit that against their lease signing fees, which are the Trio costs that we are going to charge. So I'll talk about those as well. Another item to be aware of that is a standard purchase and sale agreement, right? Purchase transaction cost is the home inspection. This is on any resale contract. So if they're going with new construction, they're not required to get a home inspection for us. They're more than welcome to do that if they'd like to do that for peace of mind. I know a lot of customers like to do that on standing inventory if the home has been around for a little bit. And standing vacant just to make sure everything's all set. But I also know that's not happening very often right now in our market, so not as much of a concern. So on new construction, that's a cost they can avoid, which is great. But on resale, they are going to have to go through and make sure that they get that home inspection completed and paid for. Daryl, do you want to talk about our specific lease signing fees?
Yeah, so I think just revisiting those first two items, I think, Lindsay, I think if we look at our, super productive agents, typically they're doing a 1% earnest money deposit because that matches up with our 1% inception fee. So there's no additional cash that's required, for the Trio fee for that line item for our customer.
You got it.
So I think that's one thing that, let's just call it a best practice is to, go with the 1% earnest money. Then that matches up. And when it gets credited, it's, no more burden out of the customer's pocket. Plus, they've got, something in the transaction. I think the mistake that many agents make is just trying to get a deal done and trying to get a deal done without knowing that your customer actually has the funds to close is just a waste of your time. So, we really encourage agents to have that tough discussion up front before you spend a bunch of time and, risking your reputation with those sellers. So, and the home inspection, it is through our preferred company, which is a fidelity company called BPG. And so that definitely is something that needs to be included. The inspector cannot be just, a friend of yours or a friend of the customer or some, person that's called up from your office. It does need to be from a BPG provider. And that's, we've learned over the years that when we don't, our inspections are inconsistent. So there are very few markets where BPG isn't represented. In those cases, then we work with you to, select a qualified inspection company. So that's kind of just some, points on that. And then on our lease fees, it's pretty simple now. There's really just two line items. It's the 1% inception fee, which is, our version of a origination fee for our lease. And so that's 1% of the home price, not of the loan amount, but of the home price. And then we charge a flat fee now of $12.95, which covers, a lot of things. It covers our underwriting fees, our processing fees. It also includes our Trio Success program, which is not just the counseling that we provide, but it also provides the insurance. It's a hardship insurance package for our customers. So that covers them if they lose their job. If we just did one for a customer in Texas that got in a car accident and they weren't able to work. And so they had trouble, actually got terminated. It was a pretty tough situation. They had a bad car accident while they were on the job, got fired from that employer. And then they did get another job a couple months later, but the interim period was really hard for them. So our insurance kicked in and helped cover their payments for those. It was actually 3 months time between those events. So that's, it isn't, $12.95 isn't a junk fee. It's really a significant, fee that does benefit the customer for what we're doing. It's not like just paying lender fees. It includes all of that. So those are the two line items. And then at the bottom of this page, clearly they're going to make their first month's payment. We require it 5 days before closing. So that payment needs to be, made before they'll be provided keys after closing.
Perfect. Thanks, Daryl. Yeah, and I think something that maybe we can kind of go back to on the initial contract write up with an agent. So our program, and I think there's a lot of confusion on this sometimes, our program does ask for a 3% closing cost concession to come from somewhere, right? So depending on how you want to negotiate that, it can come from the seller, or it's going to be the responsibility of the customer. We do have sometimes agents contribute out of their commission too for that amount. So that is something that, if not structured into the original contract as coming from the seller, will also pop up on that customer's financing estimate. And that's included in their pre-approval email that they receive, is to check out our cost to Trio page on our website. And that's included in there as well. But can sometimes catch people off guard. So be aware of that as you're writing the contract and as you're reviewing, funds available potentially with your customer, is to make sure you're having the conversation of, if the seller doesn't cover this, are you able to, are you willing to, or should we move on? Right. Tough conversation, but needs to happen for sure.
Yeah. And I think that, most agents work with down payment assistance programs where there's 100% financing, and that's what Trio is. We provide 100% financing of the purchase price of the home. So the closing costs is the standard piece that is, above that needs to be covered. And in this market, it has been more challenging to get that paid on some deals. In some markets, it's loosening up right now. And, we will finance a portion of that depending upon the customer's credit and the home that they're selecting. So if they, if they do need some assistance with this and the market's tight, then reach out to our team and make sure that they can get reviewed for that. And then how much they can get covered for. I think we'll finance up to 2% of that, Lindsay, right?
You got it.
For the customer.
Yeah, you got it. And like Daryl said, it depends, on the strength of their application, and also the home that they select. So we want to make sure too, if you're talking with your customer about this and they're already at their max budget, that might be rough for us to approve an additional financing for them, right? So they might need to back off of that max budget a little bit if this is something that you're looking to negotiate in for them and get them approved for. So all just things to keep in mind, and just reach out to our team if you have, specific questions about that customer and situation.
Yep. So, that's the thing, is really thinking about Trio financing similarly to, any of your 100% financing customers. And the structure of the contract is pretty similar. And I think that's what Lindsay said here is important, is just understanding the financial situation of your client. We don't have any more this minimum assets, savings in the bank. It's really, the customer needs to be able to cover the costs of the closing and be able to pay the fees. I think when we originally targeted, it was like 4,000 minimum, and people got confused with that. So we just removed it. So we don't qualify based on assets anymore, but clearly they're going to have to close and they've got to pay the fees that are required to close. And we disclose those early on, and customers know about those things. But, I think what Lindsay just said is important. Shopping for the max price, and we talk about budget, that means the max home, monthly payment that we've qualified them for. That's where you're going to run into challenges in some of these cases, right? So it's smarter to reel that back and make sure that the customer has a reasonable expectation of the home that they're in. If you're comparing two, and one's at their max and one's a little bit less, I would encourage you to look at the one that's a bit less and make sure you've got some cushion in there.
Definitely. And even being on our processing team, I do some of our pre-approval follow-up calls where I'll call the person once they are pre-approved, and we will go over each of these costs just to make sure they do have enough in their savings and they are able to pay these closing fees. And like I said earlier, we don't want any surprises. So we at Trio, we want to be as transparent as possible and just make sure all of your clients know exactly what they're getting into and exactly what they are going to have to pay at closing.
You got it. I think the final comment I'll make on our costs, something to be aware of as we're talking about max budget and what to expect. If you're looking at homes with an HOA, keep that in mind as well. HOA does impact not only their payment, but it also impacts their upfront costs. Customers are responsible for their HOA, which has always been wrapped into the payment, but this portion of it might be new, or how we've structured it might be new for some of our Georgia agents that have worked with us in the past. We used to wrap it all in and cover that in their payment, collect it, and then pay the HOA on the customer's behalf. But we have now pushed that to be customer responsibility. So yes, we are looking at the HOA as part of the whole payment that we're underwriting to, that they can afford. So it will impact that, and they'll get that on their disclosures. But the customer is actually going to be responsible for making that HOA payment directly to the HOA. And they'll also be responsible for any upfront fees, transfer fees, initial deposits, reserves that the HOA charges. So again, if you're looking at max budget and they have an HOA of $150 a month, that might not be the right house to continue on with, right? Ask the HOA what those fees look like, what those transfer fees look like, so that you can prepare your customer.
That's a really good point. I mean, some of these HOAs are charging
Oh
thousands.
my gosh.
It's crazy.
It is.
It really is crazy. So it's a very important thing when you're looking at your selections. You know, if it's clearly, you guys know, if it's a neighborhood that's got a pool and tennis courts and, you know, things like that, they're probably going to be charging a bunch more. Townhome developments where landscaping's included and some of the utilities, you know, again, those transfer fees can be pretty expensive. And so again, we just don't want surprises for the customer. So that's where we rely on you guys to look at that disclosure, talk to the HOA, make sure that you know and can communicate with your client and with us, you know, what to expect when we're closing on that house.
Definitely. Well, great. Well, I think we gave everyone so much great information about all of our stuff, our referrals, authorization to release, and our closing costs. I think that about ends it. Is that right, guys?
That's quite a bit for today. I mean,
I think that's probably enough for today.
pretty good.
Well, for anyone listening, feel free to leave comments if you do have any questions on anything that we discussed, or if you want us to discuss something in the future, maybe just something that you're a little bit confused about. We'd love to talk about it a little more in the future. Thanks so much, Daryl and Lindsay, for joining me. This has been such a fun day, and I'm so happy to be your host today. And thanks for having me.
Thanks, Emma.
Thanks, Emma.
Of course.
Nice. Talk
Bye,
to you
guys.
later.
Everyone have a
Thanks,
great
everyone.
day.
Bye.